Greetings. This is Dr. Joe Green, head pastor of St. Paul's Missionary Baptist Church located in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Also the founder of the 2019 movement, and I want to share a couple of thoughts with you. I want to continue in my series on the synagogue of Satan, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the shadow government. If you recall, if you've been listening to my previous YouTube videos and a lot of the teachings we've been doing, we touched a lot on the synagogue of Satan. We've also been talking about what is known as Mystery Babylon the Great, the mother of our harlots and the abominations of the earth. Now we tie all that into what is known as the New World Order, one world governmental system that is prevalent in the last days when Jesus returns. For those of you who read the Bible, when Jesus comes back again, the system that he will be facing is known as Mystery Babylon the Great. Those who are promoting that agenda, they designate it as the New World Order. We also talk about the one world governmental system. So, but you usually hear me talk about Mystery Babylon, or you also hear me talk about the globalist agenda or something like that. They're all tied in together. It's a one world governmental system that will oppose Christ and oppose those who, as the Bible says, names are written in the Lamb's Book of Life. So anyway, let's go through some things. When we talk about the synagogue of Satan, you're familiar with Revelation chapter 2 and Revelation chapter 3. Revelation chapter 2, it says, I know your works and where Satan's seat is. It describes the area known as Pergamos in the Bible as Satan's seat. And it also talks about the serpent cult that was there in that place. Revelation 3 also talks about the synagogue of Satan that says that they're Jews, but they're not. They do lie, right? So we tie in Revelation chapter 2 to Revelation chapter 3 and Revelation chapter 3 to this group that the Bible calls the synagogue of Satan. They say that they're Jews, but they lie, right? They know that they're not. They know their real identity, but the identity that they give to the world is a different identity, right? Now, before I go any further, I always like to remind people this is not about anti-Semitism. This is not about nationalism or anything like that, because what the Bible tells us is that there were physical descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and they were considered, what the Bible talks about, Hebrews, Israelites, or Jews, right? So they're different designations, but we're not going to parse that out right now. So we're talking about physical descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, down through Moses, through Jesus, and through the nation of Israel. We're not talking about those people. We're also not talking about those people that were grafted in, because not only were people physically born a Jew, but the Bible from all the way from Exodus all the way through has always given provision to what is called the grafting in process, which means even if you weren't physically born as one of the children of Israel or a Hebrew, you always had a provision from the book of Exodus on that you could be grafted into the family of God. Now we know in the New Testament that grafting in is through faith, right? Born again by the Spirit of God. But even in the Old Testament, they still had the opportunity of coming into covenantal relationship with the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. We call him Yahweh. Well, the Bible calls him Yahweh, right? They always had that opportunity to come into covenant. And the Bible says in Exodus 12 that when someone desires to come in covenant with Yahweh and he goes through the provisions to make the covenant, it was the same as though he was born a Jew, right? So what I say when I say that is that when we say the synagogue of Satan, as the Bible says in Revelation 3, that say that they're Jews, but they're not, they do lie. We're not talking about national identity. We're not talking about whether it's a European. Some people say that, some of the African tribes were children of Israel. We're not talking about any of those people, because any person who desired to have a true covenant with Yahweh, there was provisions made. So what are we talking about? We're talking about a group of people that on the surface, they pretend as though they have made covenant with Yahweh, but actually they're not. They're of the synagogue of Satan. And so who are these people? We need to define these people, because these are the people that actually run the world system, right? The system of this world. Jesus said he calls Satan the God of this world, right? He's talking about the principality of this world. Ephesians 6 tells us that we don't wrestle against flesh and blood, but against powers, principalities, the rulers of darkness of this present age, spiritual wickedness in high places. So the Bible even confirms the fact throughout that there are people that run this world system that are wicked and evil, right? And so this is all tied in together. So, but very briefly, I'll run through, give a synopsis. And for those of you who have been following, again, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, hit the notification button, please share the videos. If I get up to 1,000 subscribers, then I can go live on YouTube. So right now I'm about 790. I need about 210 subscribers, and then we can go live on YouTube, and then I can take comments and have interaction and all that other great stuff. So please subscribe, please hit the notification button, please share the videos. So anyway, real quick, I'll go through a synopsis. Some of you have heard me say this before, but for those who haven't heard me describe it, the doctrine of this group of people we're talking about, the synagogue of Satan, the Bible defines Satan, Lucifer, the dragon, and the devil as all in one, right? So it's an evil principality that opposes God. Genesis 3 is when we're first introduced to the serpent, and the serpent attempts to give Adam and Eve some knowledge, the knowledge from the tree of good and evil, the fruit from the tree of good and evil, right? And so he successfully gives that to Adam and Eve, and then the Bible says their eyes were open, they were separated from God. That's one of the ways that sin came into the human experience. It was through that. Now, there are people that believe in this doctrine of the fallen angels, or doctrines of devils, as the Bible talks about. And so it's called Gnosticism by some, it's Luciferianism by others. It's the secret knowledge or the mystery Babylon religion, the mystery religions. It's several different designations, but ultimately that knowledge has come from the serpent. And if you look in Hinduism, or if you look in yoga, which yoga is a form of Hinduism, whether or not you accept that or believe that is irrelevant. It derives from Hinduism, and all of the poses represents spiritual principalities of Hinduism. So anyway, if you look at the sign of the yoga with the person who is in the position with their legs crossed, I can't think of the name of it right now, and it has a picture of the spine with the serpent wrapped around the spine. And then they believe in your third eye, which is your spiritual eye. They believe that the serpent represents the knowledge of the secret knowledge of the religion, and that you elevate yourself, through the knowledge that he gives you, right? So Genesis 3, they believe that the serpent gives them secret knowledge that makes them as gods, gives them authority and power, right? Now we fast forwarded that same doctrine goes throughout the scriptures. The same philosophy or the same mystery religion was being perfected in Genesis 11 in Babel with Nimrod. The Egyptians followed after the same philosophy, just different variations of the same thing, and Babylon did. So when Israel was in captivity in Egypt, they picked up some of that, which is why they had the golden calf soon after they came out. And then when they went to the land of Canaan, the people in the land of Canaan also participated in the same thing. And ultimately Babylon. So in Babylon, when Israel was in captivity in Babylon, they learned the ways of the Babylonians, the mystery religions. They mixed and matched a lot of times. And so what you had derived from Torah-based Judaism, which is those who follow after the Bible, the Hebrew scriptures, you have what is known as the Talmud, which is oral traditions that were passed down. And so one of the Talmuds is the Babylonian Talmud. The Babylonian Talmud entails Jewish mysticism, which is a mixing of the mystery religions and Judaism, also known as Kabbalah. And so when you look again, that whole symbol of yoga, Hinduism, the tree of life that they say in Hinduism is basically is your spinal. It's like your spine. It comes from your body, and the serpent is wrapped around it. So they believe in the tree of life. So anyway, Kabbalah is another term for Jewish mysticism. You don't have to remember all that. I'm just putting all these pieces together for you. So anyway, so the belief or the doctrine originates from Kabbalah, Jewish mysticism, the mystery religions in Babylon. Now, going back to the synagogue of Satan, there was a group called the Khazars, and the Khazars, it was around 600 or 700 AD that they were very prevalent, and they were prevalent in the Caucasoid regions, the Caucasoid Mountains you may have heard of, and it's modern day Turkey. Pergamos is modern day Turkey, so that is the region that they originated from, and they were part of the serpent cult. They practiced the mystery religions, and they were phallic worshipers, phallic symbol worshipers. They adopted Kabbalah or Jewish mysticism to mix and match in what they already believed, because they basically were one and the same. And so they adopted this form of Judaism, Jewish mysticism, that Israel learned when they were in Babylon, but they designated themselves as Jews. They migrated into Germany. And once they were in Germany, they changed their names into various things. But Germany is the hotbed for all of the things of bringing forth the mystery religions into the Western world. So in Germany, during the Enlightenment period and other times, they started to study this mystery religion once again and started to put it into practice. Now, one of the most prevalent families that you may have heard of, the Rothschild family, they were actually the Bauer family, are the ones who's in charge of the international banking cartel, if you would. But let's go a different route. I talked about them a little bit last time, but let's go in a different route, because what happened is in Germany, you had all these philosophers. They start to study psychology. Psychology was being studied. Sigmund Freud, Carl Jung, and some of these others. They studied psychology not just to understand the human brain, but to understand how to control and to manipulate the masses. You know, the Nazi Party rose up, and a lot of people think that Hitler and the Nazi Party was based on race. They even used the swastika as a sign of racism, and the origin of the swastika is not based on race. It's the occult, and the occult is the secret knowledge, or the secret. And so Hitler and the Nazis actually were part of what is known as the Thule Society, Thule, the Thule Society. And it was an occult organization, and they practiced the ancient religions, the mystery religions. And they believed that they would channel the spirits and they would get information, which is how they came up with a lot of their strategies. And so one of the things that they did is they actually they had a lot of technology that they actually created, that Nazis were working on. And they believe it was because of their tapping into the occult, the secret knowledge. And so anyway, you have World War II, of course. The Americans go in. The Americans and the Russians, we go in, we take over Germany, we split it up. And there was a thing called Operation Paperclip. So Operation Paperclip, because the Americans were afraid of the Russians, because the Russians were a great foe, and we moved into the Cold War, and it was kind of a standoff that we didn't know who was going to fight for world supremacy. So what the Americans did is they had this thing called Operation Paperclip. And what Operation Paperclip is that they actually seized many of the German scientists. They brought them over here, and they used the stuff that they learned. So let's talk about Operation Paperclip, and I'm going to bring this full circle, because this portion of the synagogue of Satan, we want to talk about the shadow government, the deep state, the actual global government that works behind the scenes and works with many various nations even to this day. Operation Paperclip was the name given to the secret movement of senior German scientists to America at the end of World War II in Europe. Operation Paperclip was primarily involved with the movement of scientists involved in rocket technology for Nazi Germany. And so Werner von Braun, who was one of the Nazi scientists who was developing rocket technology, also it is believed who worked with a gentleman by the name of Jack Parsons and others, and they started NASA. And many people have said that NASA is actually an occult organization, some of the symbology and some of the stuff they do. Jack Parsons was in cahoots with L. Ron Hubbard, and he was a student of Aleister Crowley. And if you know who Aleister Crowley is, then you know that Aleister Crowley was, they called him the wickedest man alive, 666 was his nickname. He brought the mystery religions into the Western world. And so there was a lot of students of Aleister Crowley. Many people have said that Jack Parsons was one of them. So anyway, let's move forward. So by the end of World War II, Europe had become increasingly plain to both Britain and America that Russia, USSR, would not continue with her wartime alliances, and what was known as the Cold War was about to start. And so Operation Paperclip was formulated by the Office of Strategic Services, also known as OSS, and carried out by the Joint Intelligent Objectives Agency. The plan did have one huge boost going for it. Few, if any, of the German scientists they didn't want to fall into the hands of the Russians. Therefore, when Werner von Braun and his colleagues fled the home of Nazi rocket technology, they headed for the advancing lines of American troops. They turned themselves into the American troops. Um, Officially, Operation Paperclip forbade any of the U.S. recruitment of German scientists who have actual members of the Nazi Party or who have been active participants in its activities. But nonetheless, Werner von Braun and many of the others, they did actually came and became a part of, in secret in the Americans. Army intelligence knew wanted to target in the last days of the war, and a list was found at Bonn University of the scientists the Nazi regime had released from other duties to develop rocket technology to combat the success of the Red Army. The list, the Eisenberg list, was handed to U.S. intelligence. U.S. Soldier Major Robert Staver was given the task of finding the men on the list, and he helped by the fact that many of them wanted to find the U.S. military, and the Red Army stormed across Poland towards Berlin. So they turned themselves in. They began to learn. Now, the important thing of it was, like I said, Operation Paperclip was carried out by the JOIA, which is an American organization. It was the Joint Intelligent Objectives Agency, which was bringing the intelligence agencies together, and the OSS. Now, the OSS is critical because the OSS is the forerunner for what is known as the CIA. Now, let's go a little bit further. So the CIA is founded, and a lot of the people that were involved in the CIA were a part of this organization called the Skull and Bones. Skull and Bones at Yale University was a secret Masonic type organization. Many world leaders was a part of that. They helped to found the CIA. Now, the CIA is highly involved with intelligence operations around the world. And some of the things that they learned from the Nazis was about the use of propaganda in order to promote the agenda and allow the masses to sway their public opinion. So what they would do is many times, well, not many times, this is all documented, they would be heavily involved in other nations and raising up their leaders and taking down their leaders. So before they would go in to try to overthrow a leader, they would engage in a propaganda campaign, and they would actually put out news stories in order to sway public opinion about the leader before they would go in and try to take him out. And so they also found that although it was not supposed to be used against Americans, it actually was used against Americans. And in 1970, I think it's 1974, I believe, or was it in the 1970s, there was a thing called the Church Commission. There was a congressional hearings where the CIA came to the Congress and they admitted that they were heavily involved in all of Hollywood, all of the news media, all of television media, and they would push stories through the media. And those stories were pushed in order to sway public opinion in a certain area. Now, where did they learn that from? They learned that from the Nazis, because the Nazis had perfected what was known as propaganda. And so you had the Ministry of Propaganda. I think his name was Joseph Goebbels. You also had Edward Bernays. Edward Bernays was the nephew of Sigmund Freud. Sigmund Freud is one of the most well-renowned psychiatrists in history from Europe. So, of course, the psychiatrists, they studied psychology and how the human brain works and how what is known as groupthink works and how to sway public opinion. Edward Bernays perfected it, the use of propaganda through the media, through news sources, and through Hollywood, through entertainment, and all that other stuff. They perfected that, and so the CIA had took that information and used it to perfect it on how to sway public opinion. And so when you start talking about things like the deep state and different things, when you understand the drug culture and the hippie culture of the 50s and 60s was actually created by the CIA and other organizations in order to weaken the younger generations, to make them more pliable, make them more easily controlled by the government. They were very instrumental in creating rock and roll, the drug culture with Timothy Leary and everything else, LSD. Those were drugs that were developed in order to for mind control. They perfected what is known as the MK Ultra trauma-based mind control, and that's been used in the media and news sources. And this is all well documented. I'm not this. If you look in declassified documents, you can find all this stuff out. Even that the CIA had began doing experiments on citizens by giving them drugs to see how it affected them, even against their will. And some of them actually went insane, because if you give somebody LSD or some hallucinogens and they don't know about it, the human mind can be fragile at times, and it would actually they would go insane. Um, they also perfected the use of um, the news. They created the news in a way, and created the news in a way to increase tension levels and to get people always like stressed out or stressed. That's why when the news comes on, it was created in a way to increase your stress levels. So if you ever notice when you're watching the news, breaking news, 5 dead in a car crash, they're always, every time. So what happens is, psychologically, when you begin to hear the news come on, your pulse rate increases, and sometimes you can get butterflies in your stomach because you're like, oh, what's happening now? And I say all that to say that when we look at what's happening now with COVID-19 and different things like that, they are still using the media in order to increase fear and to stir up high stress levels in people, so that we can stay in a state of fear and panic all the time. And they continually do that. That is what they're doing. That's why every day they're saying how many cases, how many numbers. Now the death toll is up to this, and this, it's so many more contaminated, and this and that. They're telling you these things over and over and over again to invoke fear, because at the end of the day, if you're taking the proper precautions, then it shouldn't matter. I mean, you take your precautions. If you do social distancing, like they said, if you wear a mask when you go in public, limit your exposure to other people, all those things, then it shouldn't matter to you, because if you're doing all that you can do to keep yourself safe, then you don't have to operate in fear about who died over in California or Las Vegas or New Jersey or anything, as long as you're taking the proper precautions. But see, the CIA has always engaged in propaganda, and the other part of that is a lot of these scientists that they brought over in Operation Paperclip. They actually took them to Columbia University and other major universities. So it is reported that Columbia University in New York, University of Michigan, Stanford University, and some of the other major universities are actually places that are very heavily involved. The CIA is heavily involved in the propaganda that goes on there. Also, when you understand the Ivy Leagues, a lot of the people that were instrumental with the Ivy Leagues were instrumental with a lot of the CIA and the other intelligence agencies behind the scenes. Let me read this quote from Aldous Huxley. Aldous Huxley wrote the book Brave New World, and I think this is very prophetic. I believe he wrote this book in the 1940s. Also, if you want to read George Orwell's 1984, that is a classic book, and you should read as well, because what these books are actually doing is they're giving you insight into the strategy of the globalists, the people that we're talking about, and how they plan on manipulating the masses in order for them to accept the rulership over them. Just like with this COVID-19, what they're doing is they are promoting the ideas and increasing panic for you to willingly give up your rights as an individual. And I'm gonna come back to that. But I want you to keep in mind about your liberties and your life and how important that is. But anyway, this is Aldous Huxley. Aldous Huxley's his quote is, "There will be in the next generation or so a pharmacological method of making people love their servitude and producing dictatorship without tears, so to speak, producing a kind of painless concentration camp for entire societies, so that people will in fact have their liberties taken away from them, but will rather enjoy it." Let me read that line again. It says that entire societies, it will produce a kind of painless concentration camp for entire societies, so that people will in fact have their liberties taken away from them, but will enjoy it. And so people are willingly giving up their rights, and they enjoy it. But let me say this to you. So the panic is out there that people are, self quarantining themselves. Some people are glad that there's a shutdown and everything's locked down, and some people are willing to allow this to play out as long as the government says that they should do it. But here's what I need you to understand. I need you to understand that the human beings were made to be free. And whenever human beings are not free, at some point in time, something stirs up inside the human experience and the humankind that they rebel against their captivity. That is why the CIA, the shadow government, the synagogue of Satan, and all these people spend so much time and effort in trying to create things like pandemics, right, and different crises in order to get you to give up your servitude. It's called suggestive programming. It's called the Hegelian dialectic and other things you've heard me say. So please go back through some of my videos. But we're at a point now, just like Aldous Huxley said, people are having their liberties taken away from them and they're enjoying it or they're supporting it. They're going along with it. And that is why they spend so much time in trying to dumb down the masses, try to manipulate the masses using psychological operations, crises, and all the things that they have perfected in a way to dumb you down and numb you to the point where by the time you realize that your liberties are taken, it's too late and you won't have any ability to fight back against it. That's what this is all about. Because think about what is happening with this shutdown. There are people who have lost their jobs. There are people who have lost their businesses. There are people that won't be able to pay their rent or their mortgage, so they won't have a place to live. They won't be able to take care of their family. They won't be able to buy the things that they need. And what do you think happens to human beings when they get to that place? Let me tell you what happens. When people get to the place where they can't take care of their needs like food and shelter, when they can't feed their children, it will bring forth chaos. It will bring forth a violent revolt where people will get to the place where then you will really have a dire situation. You will really have a crisis. People won't just stand by forever and be entrapped or be enslaved. See, they're trying to convince you that you should willingly give up your rights and be like a communist country where the government will take care of you. That's their ultimate goal. And so when you study history, when you study them and what they have said and what they write and what they believe, then you have to draw the conclusion that this is all part of a larger agenda to get you to give up your liberties and be okay with it, or put yourself in a position that even when you want to fight back, you'll have no recourse. That's why the framers of the Constitution that understood that gave us our Bill of Rights. They gave us the First Amendment to the Constitution and the Second Amendment to the Constitution. The First Amendment to the Constitution was that you had the right to free speech, because that's why they're really attacking free speech now. They're saying certain things are hate speech. They're saying certain things are dangerous speech, so they're trying to censor people. They're trying to shut people down. Major platforms such as YouTube and Facebook and some of these other, Twitter and Instagram, some of these major platforms are shutting people down because they're saying things that go against the agenda. That is a violation of the First Amendment of the Constitution. The freedom of religion. You are free to practice your religion without any governmental interference. That is the First Amendment of the Constitution. Freedom of the press. See, the press is supposed to be free to be able to question authority whenever they see fit. Freedom of assembly. You have the freedom to assemble together peacefully. It means as long as you're not trying to burn the buildings down, you have the right to assemble and you have the right to redress, which means you can hold the government accountable. Now, why is this important? This is important because the Constitution states that we are given certain inalienable rights, God-given rights, certain inalienable rights from our Creator, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and that the government shall not infringe upon those rights. And the reason the government can't infringe upon those rights is because they weren't given by the government. The government can't take back something it didn't give you in the first place because God is the one who gave you those, not the government. Now, along with that, it also acknowledges that the government derives its just power from the consent of the governed. It means that we, the people, are the ones that give the authority to the government, not the other way around. And that is so important because what I'm saying to you is if you live in fear and panic of some kind of upcoming pandemic or something that's going to happen in the future, you have the right to quarantine yourself. You have the right to socially distance if that's what you choose to do. You have the right to not allow people in your house or not to go around large crowds. You have that right. You have that God-given right to make that decision, but you should never be okay with the government making that decision for you. So the people that want to go in the crowds, the people that want to put themselves and not socially distance, they have a God-given right to do that. If I want to put myself in jeopardy, I have a God-given right to do that. And so we have to understand the plan of the enemy. You have to understand the whole purpose behind that and stop being socially manipulated and engineered through the media, through the narrative they're giving you, through all these things. I'm not saying that the disease can't be dangerous. I'm not saying that people don't die. But I do know that this is part of the agenda, that they are intentionally inflating the numbers and making it worse than it actually is. Because I read the study, and even Dr. Fauci admitted in I think it was in the Harvard Journal or one of those medical journals, he actually admitted that COVID-19 has the same mortality rate as the common flu that we get every year. 60 to 80,000 people die every year from the flu. And so it just goes to show you that now they're panicking at such a higher level over something that you have the same chance of dying from that as the flu. And every year the flu comes around. Flu season comes around every year, but yet they don't shut everything down because of that, because they're trying to put you in a panic. They're trying to get you to willingly give up your rights. They're trying to give up your they're trying to take away your God-given rights without your permission, but they're getting you to support it. This has been Dr. Joe Green, head pastor of St. Paul's Missionary Baptist Church, also the founder of the 2019 movement. Until next time, peace and blessings to you. Shalom, shalom. And like the old saying goes, give me liberty or give me death. We cannot be okay as a society with living as slaves under the fear of the threat of something bad happening. That is a horrible existence, and we will never be satisfied if we give in to that. I love you. Shalom, shalom. Peace and blessings.